Good afternoon, 406 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Kate Anderson joins us from the Daily Caller News Foundation at 4:30. We'll talk to her about an event for doctors all across the country rejecting people who have detransitioned, that is, have concluded that they weren't born in the wrong body. The medical industry hates those people. Why is that? And then Congressman Mike Collins will be with us at 5:30 from Georgia. We'll talk to him about Lake and Riley and the news from this weekend. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Jimmy Kimmel is another one of these guys with talent who has squandered it on leftist claptrap for years. He really has. I guess ABC decided that they would just go in-house for the Oscars this weekend, and they used Jimmy Kimmel. I don't know, is there a way to boost his ratings? Jimmy Kimmel was the host. Trump didn't like it. Donald Trump was expressing that on Truth Social. He said, man, he's terrible. I guess he was watching the Oscars. And somehow Trump convinced Jimmy Kimmel to read the criticism of himself on the air. Take a listen.
Everyone. I was just, doing this show is not about me, and I appreciate you having me. It's really about you and Emma and all these great actors and actresses and filmmakers. But I was told we have like an extra minute, and I'm really proud of something. I was wondering if I could share it with you. I just got a review, and has there ever been a worse host than Jimmy Kimmel at the Oscars? His opening was that of a less-than-average person trying too hard to be something which he is not and never can be. Get rid of Kimmel and perhaps replace him with another washed-up but cheap ABC talent, George Slopanopoulos. He would make everybody on stage look bigger, stronger, and more glamorous. Blah, blah, blah. Make America great again. Okay, now. See if you can guess which former president just posted that on Truth. Anyone? No? Well, thank you, President Trump. Thank you for watching. I'm surprised you're still... Isn't it past your jail time?
A Hollywood crowd going wild for the police state. Joining us now, Batya Ungar Sargon is here, opinion editor over at NewsWeek and the author of Bad News, How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy. Batya, great to have you back with us. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Vince. This is one of my favorite shows to do. I love joining you.
And you're like, I just said to Corey before you got on the air, I was like, she's like the most cheerful person in all of media. So thank you for being here. You always bring us up. So this Oscars last night, you kind of think at some point Hollywood would realize that like maybe offending more than half the audience is a bad idea, but they did it last night with glee. In fact, the camera cut away from Jimmy Kimmel after that joke about sending Trump to prison. All of the Hollywood stars who were in attendance were laughing, hooting, hollering, clapping. They thought it was great.
So here's what's so funny about it is like up until that moment, it did seem much less political than usual. Like it seemed almost like they were trying to rein that side of themselves in. And then they got right to the end and they're like, well, we can't just let it go. And so they read out this tweet by Trump, which, by the way, was funnier than anything Jimmy Kimmel had said all night. And it's just so funny when they accidentally like allow people to know how funny Donald Trump is. But they just couldn't let it go. They couldn't let the night go without being like, we are not you, you are the other, and you are the people that we make fun of. It was hilarious.
Yeah. No, they did it a bunch of times last night. I mean, you're right that there were few and far between, but there were other moments. Kimmel took a shot at Senator Katie Britt of Alabama. Remember, she gave a much maligned State of the Union response last week. I thought it was fine. I wasn't jumping on the bandwagon of people who were very critical of her. But here's Jimmy Kimmel taking a glancing shot at her.
Emma Stone is an Oscar nominee for the fifth time, right? The fifth time. And she is, Emma, you are so unbelievably great in Poor Things. Emma played an adult woman with the brain of a child, like the lady who gave the rebuttal to the State of the Union on Thursday night.
Again, what are they trying to do with this audience? I guess in Jimmy Kimmel's case, like he gave up on trying to attract anybody of a conservative persuasion a long time ago.
Definitely. Well, first of all, I want to point out, I don't think, I was watching very closely. I don't think Emma Stone really laughed, and I adore her, so I was very glad to see that. I'm also so glad that you said you didn't join the bandwagon, because I honestly, I was so shocked by this. Like, okay, yeah, so Senator Britt is bad at acting. Like, when did that become a bad thing? You know what I'm saying? Like, don't you kind of want people who are so earnest and sincere that when they try to put on a performance, it comes off fake because they're so used to being real? Like, isn't that something we should want more of from our politicians?
Yeah, amen. Amen. Yeah, I thought she was just fine. I thought she's getting needless heat, in light of the fact that Biden couldn't even say the name of the woman who was murdered last week, and now he's spending time making excuses for having called her killer an illegal, which of course was true, was totally true. He shouldn't apologize for saying true things, and yet that's where we are. Let me stay on the Oscars with you for a moment. There was another moment last night that was weird and I would say sad. There was a director by the name of Jonathan Glazer. He accepted an award last night, and during his acceptance speech, he said that he wanted to refute his own Jewishness in the service of standing up for, I guess, Hamas, the anti-Israel forces. Take a listen.
All our choices were made to reflect and confront us in the present, not to say, look what they did then, rather look what we do now. Our film shows where dehumanization leads at its worst. It shaped all of our past and present. Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people.
What is he talking about, Batya?
Vince, I'm a very calm person, but you somehow manage to get these topics when you have me on that make me want to scream. So I'm gonna try to really hold it together.
Please.
Do you know what a pick me is, Vince?
A pick-me, isn't that usually how they describe girls who are trying to convince men to date them? Is that what we refer?
Yeah, a pick-me is a girl who's like, I'm not like those other girls who diet and won't eat fattening things and won't drink fattening. I drink beer. I am one of the guys. That's a pick-me, okay? It's like,
okay.
Pick me, right? Pick me. I'm not like the rest of them. Unfortunately, there are some pick-me Jews out there who will do anything to get the raucous applause that this guy that you're talking about got after he said he refutes his Judaism because of whatever, Israel, right? They will do anything to get that rapacious applause from anti-Semites who are out there. And, 95% of Jews are Zionists. The 5% who are anti-Zionists, you should see how enormous their platforms are because, of course, every anti-Zionist and anti-Semite wants the pick-me Jew on their team so they can be like, look, I'm not an anti-Semite. I have Jewish cover. That's what was going on there, was this man showing up and in front of this completely elite non-Jewish audience saying, I refute my Judaism because I don't like what Israel is doing. So I don't want my Judaism to be used in that way.
I can't even identify with such an impulse because, for instance, I'm Catholic and I have all sorts of beef with people in and around the church. And I say it out loud on a routine basis on this program. But I never once have thought I refute my Catholicism. That's never even crossed my mind. So what is this? I refute my Jewishness? How could you stand there on stage and say that?
And can you imagine, this is a man who made a Holocaust movie, right? Like, he's doing this having made a Holocaust movie 6 months after the largest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Yeah. He is standing with the perpetrators. It is so absolutely disgusting. And the left is out there defending this guy and saying it's noble that he's saying he doesn't want his Judaism to be used in the service of Israel. Guess what? There would be no Judaism without Israel. Like, none of us would be safe. We're all literally there before the grace of God go by. It's just sad elitist mentality that unfortunately a tiny percentage of Jews who go to these elite universities, they imbibe this nonsense that being Zionist is evil and be proud of being your Judaism. Yeah. And can I just say, I just want to draw a contrast with Cillian Murphy, who got up there and he won for Oppenheimer. And he said, I accept this as a proud Irish man, which is amazing. And then he said he clearly wanted to say something about, Israel, Gaza, whatever. He comes from Ireland, which is a deeply anti-Semitic country, by the way, because they project all of their troubles onto Israel. And what he said was, I want to dedicate this to the peacemakers. That is a classy way to say I am heartsick at the destruction and the devastation of Gaza, and I'm not going to be drawn into the wishful thinking of the anti-Semites and playing their game.
It's amazing. It's just amazing how these figures use this stage for these political messages. Meanwhile, people who enjoy movies were probably thinking maybe this event would be about that, but not so much. Hey, on the Hollywood front, there was. I do want to reflect on something. You were on Bill Maher's show now 2 weeks ago. You had an outstanding appearance there, in fact, let me share with the audience just some of your exchange on Bill Maher. This is Batya Ungar Sargon on Bill Maher again 2 weeks ago now.
There was no party representing 60% of Americans who are working class, middle class, working really hard, trying to make it. Trump showed up and he spoke directly to those people. And I'm sorry, Bill, but he made a difference for them. He changed the calculation. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. When he showed up, there was a handshake agreement between both parties on free trade. Remember NAFTA? That was the Democrats, okay? That was the Democrats changing from representing the working class to representing the elites, right? Now the Democrats represent 9 of the 10 richest counties in America. Did you know that 65% of Americans who make more than $500,000 a year now vote Democrat?
Stop yelling at me.
I'm sorry.
No.
Lost the working class.
Okay.
And what Trump did was he said, we're not doing free trade anymore. We're going to have a trade war with China. Why would we have
you think that helped the working class, the trade war with China?
They think it helped them. And if you think, sorry, I'm not.
They think, exactly, they think.
No, let me just ask you, you think a person living on a shoestring budget who doesn't have $400 for emergency is wrong about which president is helping him?
I think so.
Batya, by the way, you were entirely alone. Yes, round of applause. Everybody in studio is clapping for you. You were entirely alone on that set making the case here. But you did, and you were forceful. I mean, what was that like going into the Lions Den?
The audience hated me, and I just was like, God put me on this stage, and I'm going to do what I think he would want me to do. And Bill tried his hardest to be gracious. Listen, you have to understand, I was saying everything he didn't want to hear, right? It was like pushing all of his buttons, and I think he did his best to be gracious and to even out the scales. But obviously, he and Tim Ryan agreed on everything, and the audience was like completely and at some point, when I got off set, I felt like, wow, I what just happened? I was like a little bit shocked. But yeah.
It was great. It was great. And then so in the subsequent week, as a kind of a palate cleanser for the left-wing audience, Bill Maher brought in Robert DeNiro. Okay, so DeNiro had to follow your act. And so Batya, who was grounded in facts and reason, is the complete opposite of Robert DeNiro, who was grounded in his emotional incontinence. Here he was this weekend.
Nothing at all. Nothing redeemable in him. And we have to, and whoever the people are who want to vote for him, and there look like intelligent people around there. Somebody, for some reason, it can't be. It cannot be. If he wins the election, you won't be on the show anymore. He'll come looking for me. There'll be things that happen that none of us can imagine. That's what happens in that kind of a dictatorship, which is what he says. Let's believe him. Take him at his word.
All right, so Robert DeNiro says things that are so ridiculous that even Bill Maher's audience was laughing as he claimed them, Batya.
I'm glad that you caught that. Yeah, I was surprised that they laughed at that. This is like the Handmaid's Tale phenomenon in uber blue cities, right? Like no one's coming for you. They're like the narcissism that somehow an actor poses a threat to Donald Trump. It's so ridiculous. Like all Trump wants to do is make fun of these people on Twitter or on Truth Social. It's so absolutely ridiculous. Like that they would be somehow in the firing line. That Trump has these the ability to do that, the ability to come from. The one thing I want to point out is Robert De Niro says he would not even play Trump as an actor because he could find nothing good in him. This is a man who played like mass murderers. Like they are so messed up in the head, Vince.
I know. No one's coming for you, the narcissism. I think that's, out of all of the great lines of this interview, that's definitely up there. Thank you very much. Batya Ungar Sargon, always nice to talk to you.
God bless you.
The best. All right. All right, let's head to the phones. We've got Bob calling in from Winchester now, line 2. Bob, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, what's up, brother? I just wanted to remind everyone that Robert De Niro played Satan in a movie called Angel Heart with Mickey Rourke and Lisa Bonet. It's an old movie from the 80s, and his name was Louis Cypher, which, of course, is Lucifer, and he was Satan, and Mickey Rourke had like sold his soul or something. I forget the exact plot, but it's a good movie. So he's such a mental case that he can play Satan, but he can't play Trump.
Well, I didn't hear the full clip, but we just heard from Batya Ungar Sargon. He apparently said on Bill Maher's show, I can't play Trump because I can't find anything redeeming about him. There's no good quality about him that I could play.
Right.
But Satan, apparently, there has some redemptive qualities.
Yeah, exactly. These people are severely mentally ill. They truly are mental cases. Or as Chris Plant always says, they are demented.
Well, yeah, that's the root of dementia. That's where that comes from. All right, Bob, thank you. Yeah,
There you
that's
Love you, brother.
Love you too, buddy. Hey, this is a fascinating feature. I've not seen this movie, but that's perfect. That's perfect. If we were assembling this segment and just trying to figure out, well, that's ridiculous. Here's why. Yeah, because Robert De Niro once played Satan. Now he says he can't play Trump. No, can't find anything good about him. Really? Tell us what you like about Satan. What was the thing that you really enjoyed about Satan when you played him in a movie? Also, De Niro was not joking. You heard him. You heard his voice there, where he was like, "He's gonna come after me if Trump gets elected again. He's gonna come after me, and he's gonna cancel Bill Maher." He said, "What? What are you even talking about?" Did any of these people remember Trump was president of the United States? Do you remember when he sicked the entire federal government on Robert De Niro? You remember that? Yeah, me neither. It's because it didn't happen. It's not going to happen. What do they call him in Hollywood? Oh, Bobby De Niro. Go home, Bobby. You're drunk. All right. Coming up on the program, Kate Anderson will be with us from the Daily Caller News Foundation. We've got the medical industry not too happy about people who think they were born in the correct body. We'll explain. Good afternoon to you. 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up in the next hour, Congressman Mike Collins of Georgia will be with us. Boy, that guy's great on Twitter. He's even better on radio. You'll hear him coming up 5:30. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. You're looking around being like, what is going on in the world, especially the medical industry? Why are so many doctors and medical organizations and pharmaceutical companies going along with this idea that people can be born in the wrong bodies and then cutting them up or medicating them in order to indulge that lie? What happened? Well, for more on that, I want to bring in Kate Anderson. She's a culture reporter for the Daily Caller News Foundation with an important new report. Kate, good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Hi, Vince. It's really good to be on today, and thanks so much for having me on.
Of course. All right, so the headline on your piece today is exclusive. Top doctors complain detransitioners posed harm to trans members at medical conference. Let's just go over the basics of what these terms mean. What are detransitioners, and why would doctors freak out about them being at a conference?
Yeah, well, it's incredibly ironic, the headline in itself. And so a detransitioner would be somebody who, they've gone through some part of the medical process to transition or to attempt to transition from a male to a female or vice versa. For instance, one of the individuals mentioned in these emails is Chloe Cole. I believe she's 19. And she started medically transitioning at 13 with puberty blockers and eventually a mastectomy in order to appear as male. And so, but she has since detransitioned, meaning that she has reverted back to her biological sex, and that is how she's living her life now. And so these doctors, in these public record request emails that we got, are complaining about that, and they're saying they feel threatened or they feel unsafe being in the same room as someone like Chloe Cole or Prisha Mosley, which is an incredible statement to make, considering they're the ones pushing these kinds of treatments and policies.
What conference of doctors are we talking about?
Yeah, so this was at the American Academy of Pediatrics conference. They hold one every year. They're holding one, I believe, in Florida this year, and last year it was in October. And so these doctors attended this conference, and Chloe Cole and Prisha Mosley and several others were with FAIR, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism in Medicine, and that group opposes the medical transition of children. They're very active against that, and so they invited Chloe Cole and Prisha to be at this booth and to talk to people, to talk to the doctors who are going to be making these policies and pushing these kinds of treatments, to give them an idea of what it looks like on the other side.
Yes.
So that's kind of where this took place.
Right. So they come, and if this was a scientific enterprise or an organization dedicated to science, they'd be open to all sorts of people and opinions and details to help make wise decisions. But in this case, they were not open to someone who said that. Actually, I regret, having the medical industry cut me up, and in fact, I prefer the body that I was born in. Why are they so threatened by that person?
That's a good question. I wish the AAP would have responded to my request to them for comment so we could get some idea about that. But I think Chloe Cole, who I spoke with about this, actually gave a good response to this. She said that it's deeply concerning that these individuals who would be the ones to provide this treatment to young kids. I mean, she was 13 when she started going through transition. And she talks about how, you read these emails and you kind of have to laugh. They're almost humorous in how ridiculous it is, but it is concerning. And she said, there should be nothing scary about a detransitioner. And she talks about how it is actually scary that these people don't listen to someone like her.
And I've interviewed Chloe Cole a number of times, including in person. She is one of the smallest human beings I've ever met. I mean, she's like a tiny little, she's non-threatening, in other words. So the idea that she would, quote, make attendees feel unsafe is truly one of the most preposterous possible claims that anybody could utter.
Well, and I think it's also important to note that the AAP is being sued over this kind of thing. They're being sued by a detransitioner because of their policy that claims that things like puberty blockers are reversible, which we know they're not. Puberty blockers, if they're given to a young enough child, like 11, 12, which is not uncommon as as the media likes to claim, when they're given that, they are often infertile for the rest of their life. That's not reversible. And so these kids don't know that. An 11-year-old doesn't care about fertility. They don't even know what that means. And so I think, to answer your earlier question, I think that's probably part of why the AAP doesn't want someone like Chloe Cole or Prisha Mosley or FAIR being at an event like this, because it exposes it for what it truly is and the harm that it can do to these kids.
Yes. Now, meanwhile, there's also a lot of money in this industry that's dedicated to these practices, right? I mean, cutting up kids, putting them on puberty blockers, having them be dependent on the medical industry for the rest of their lives, starting with an elective procedure and then leading, of course, to numerous required procedures in order to maintain that. That's a big cash cow, and you have to believe the American Academy of Pediatrics has decided rather than follow the science here, they're going to follow the money.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a question that has to be raised, and it's not just the AAP. It's profitable for many groups. Like Megan Brock and I, who worked with me on this report, we also did a report on Planned Parenthood, and they give out these puberty blockers to children, they give them out to, I think it's anywhere from 16 through adults. And there's a lot of money to be made in this industry, like you said. And so I do think that's a poll. They don't want to. One of the individuals in these emails works with a pharmaceutical company, and so it's embedded. But it's unfortunate that a young woman like Chloe, who, like you said, is very non-threatening. She's very small. She's young, and she's been through this. She can't have a voice because they don't want to lose dollars or they don't want to hurt their reputation when it's harmed her life. It's not reversible in many, many ways.
Yeah, and she's worried about what the future holds for her. She said that a whole bunch of times. So finally, do you get the sense at all that the dam will be breaking on any of this? Because occasionally you hear from pediatricians who are members of the American Academy of Pediatrics who are horrified by what's going on here. I know there have been efforts in the past to get the American Academy of Pediatrics back into normal land, try and correct them and to get away from all this radicalism. What are the chances that happens?
Vince, I believe in being an optimistic realist. So I think it's going to take time. And, it's taken a long time to get to this point, and I think in some ways it'll probably get worse before it gets better. But I think you're right. I do think doctors are seeing this, and now we have these stories. I think that's why these stories are so crucial, and why it's crucial for someone who is a detransitioner to be able to be at these conferences, because before there's no long-term studies on these things. But now we have kids, young people, who have gone through it and who have been harmed, and they can show doctors what that does to them. And I think that's going to have a huge impact. So I do think that there are going to be doctors more and more coming out saying this is dangerous and it's wrong.
Right. But Kate, as I think you've actually reported on, even the surveys on these questions are corrupted, because when they try and do surveys on satisfaction with these so-called gender transition surgeries, they literally exclude the people who are like Chloe Cole from the data. It's people who say, I regret mine. Well, you're not included in the survey data. Well, then how can it be an accurate survey?
Well, it can't. And, I think you're referencing the report that came out not too long ago that claimed that it was an astronomical number, something like 90,000 people, or transgender individuals in America, had more life satisfaction because they transitioned. And then there was a subset of them that had hormones. They got like puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. And again, it was an astronomically high number of them. I want to say it was like 85% of them said, I am so much more satisfied by this. But like what you said, they didn't include any detransitioners. So that's like saying, everyone's happy at the gym, but you're not including the people who left, in the first couple months, when New Year's Eve resolutions happen and then they're uncomfortable in the gym and they leave. That's like it's not including everyone. And so it's very skewed. The data is incredibly skewed.
Yeah, and it's distorted to serve a purpose. Thank you very much for staying on top of the facts here. Kate Anderson with the Daily Caller News Foundation. Really appreciate this, and please keep us posted if you get any updates from these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Vince, thank you so much for having me on to talk about this topic.
Of course. So great to have you. All right, that was Kate Anderson, and this is a big deal. So the American Academy of Pediatrics, did you ever think, in your wildest dreams, that they'd be hacking up children? That would be the plan for the American Academy of Pediatrics. You start to think maybe there needs to be. There's been every so often there is an effort to get to these national organizations and scare the crap out of them, rattle them. I'm not talking about threats to them. I mean threats to their bottom line. I think about there's an actual shaming of these institutions until they comply, until they get back to some sort of sense of normalcy. The example I'm thinking of is the National School Board Association. Remember that? When all of a sudden it became crystal clear that they released this letter saying we need to treat parents as terrorists, as extremists all across the country. They do it in concert with the Department of Education under Joe Biden. They do it in concert with the White House. They come out, they orchestrate this whole thing. Merrick Garland comes out and says, we got to monitor all these people. The same thing is happening with real damage to children as a result of the American Academy of Pediatrics. By the way, I'd love to see the traffic between the White House and the American Academy of Pediatrics and all these other government institutions that place pressure on them to continue this radical destruction of children. I'd love to see the emails there for you good government organizations out there that are in the business of suing the government for the paperwork. But the pressure on the National School Board Association worked. Why? Remember, state after state after state, school board associations began quitting the National School Board Association, saying we want nothing to do with this. Treat parents as terrorists? Treat them as extremists? Sick the FBI on them? Call the FBI tip line to report parents who are angry at school board meetings? Well-deserved anger at school board meetings? I'm out. I'm not a part of it. So this is where doctors come in. This is where people who are associated with the American Academy of Pediatrics, who perhaps feature that detail on their own websites or whatever, can place pressure on this institution to say enough. Chopping children up, disrupting their natural biology is a disgrace. You're sterilizing them. You're mutilating them. You're wrecking them. You're robbing them of sexual pleasure. You're robbing them of a life of joy and fulfillment, of purpose. You are indulging them in their confusion. You are making life-altering decisions for them. You are accelerating them into that destruction. What is the story we heard from Chloe Cole and others? How often is it you can raise these issues and the medical industry will just put you on a conveyor belt? I think Matt Walsh has used this analogy before. Put you on a conveyor belt and right through without resistance. without any pause, without any reflection. Hold up a second. Maybe this is not a good idea. What else is going on in your life? You sure you want to do this? This is a very big step. It's irreversible. But they don't even say that. They say it's reversible. They lie to these kids. They lie to them. Anyway, it's one of the craziest things. This topic to me, a couple years back, I thought that this was just like, oh, this is something that happens just random. Like to the 1 out of every 10 million people is engaged in something like this. It's not like that anymore. It's all over the place. And by the way, while I'm on the subject, and I'm thinking about it right now, so I'm going to bring it up right now, TikTok is fueling a lot of this garbage. TikTok, the Chinese-controlled social media company, TikTok is fueling so much of this destruction and putting kids in the direction of the ghouls that are inside of the American medical industry. That is happening. And this ridiculous stuff about, oh, we need to protect TikTok from being forced into it, that is, we need to protect the Chinese Communist Party's stake in TikTok, is insanity to me. And to the extent that anybody on the right has been saying it, it's so far away from what we should be doing. We're wrecking an entire generation of kids with this thing. The Chinese government is. The Chinese government is. So I said it last week. I'll say it again now. There was Rand Paul and Elon Musk and Donald Trump have all come out and mounted some defenses of TikTok. In fact, Donald Trump was on CNBC this morning doing that very thing, saying that, well, he doesn't want to empower Facebook. And I understand the impulse of not wanting to grow Facebook. But here, let's look at what we're dealing with here. TikTok is wrecking an entire generation through the psyop that the Chinese Communist Party is running in America, that they don't run on their own people, by the way. They run excellent. They pursue excellence with their people on a separate app. It's the same exact company, but it's a different platform in China designed to improve the population, not destroy it and divide it, which is what China's doing here in America. And it's also a surveillance tool of the Chinese Communist Party. When Trump was president, he called for its banishment. He pursued getting rid of it in the United States of America. This weekend, going into the weekend and certainly this morning, he indicated some support for it in the sense that he doesn't want Facebook's market share to grow. And I get it. He's got every reason to have a beef with Facebook and its manipulation in the election. Duly noted. And it is of a great concern. No question there. Especially every single person within our government who used Facebook as a cutout to violate the First Amendment should be behind bars. They should be prosecuted for that. That's what it looks like when you actually have consequences. But on the Chinese side, there should be no defense of TikTok. This is a stupid position. It's a stupid position. There should be no defense of it. And, there are some people who are mounting it. I know Congress is debating this very topic in the week ahead. Forcing a divestiture is great. And it's also not a ban. I just want to remind people, as you see this go across your headlines, that people debating banning TikTok. That's not what they're actually debating in Congress right now. Right now, they're in Congress. They're debating forcing the Chinese Communist Party to divest from TikTok in order to allow TikTok to exist in the United States under American ownership. You want to have a social media platform? Fine. Americans have to own it. It can't be the Communist Party. They can't control the whole damn thing. Because what is it doing? Well, look around. Just look around. What's happening in the schools? Talk to a teacher. Ask them what is happening inside of their classrooms. And ask them what role TikTok is playing. If you don't know, I think you'll be surprised by some of the answers. Do you remember the ridiculous January 6th committee that Nancy Pelosi put together? Of course you do. How could you forget? It was on national television. They put it in prime time. They brought in an ABC News producer to produce the whole thing to try and sell it to the American people because the facts weren't going to work. They just needed to sex that thing up a bit to try and make people think that it was legitimate. Of course, it never was. The members of the January 6th committee included these people who have just totally betrayed their oath of office, all of them. Zoe Lofgren, Adam Schiff, Pete Aguilar, Stephanie Murphy, Jamie Raskin, Elaine Luria, and then, of course, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. Crying Adam Kinzinger. So Republicans in the House now have been conducting an investigation into, wait a second, what did the January 6th committee actually get a hold of? What was the information in their possession? What didn't they share with the American people about the events of that day, January 6th, 2021? And wouldn't you know it, some brand new information popping out today, and it involves one of the most provocative claims in the entire nationally televised hearing. You know, the one where Donald Trump dove Jackie Chan style from the back seat to the front seat of what they call the Beast, the limousine that carries the President of the United States, designed to grab the steering wheel and drive it himself from the back seat. Remember that, Clem? Remember how ridiculous it was at the time? Wait until you hear how ridiculous it is now. New information coming out. I'll share it with you in just a moment. Also, we'll be joined by Congressman Mike Collins from Georgia. He has some thoughts about Laken Riley, her murderer, and Joe Biden's decision to try and whitewash the whole thing. Coming up.